Tony Jeary here. I want to talk to you today about influence, really getting people to take action. So whether you're in a sales role, a leadership role, or you're just thinking about yourself personally, most everybody wants to really improve their ability to persuade and get people to take action. And I want to give you some of the best ideas that I've picked up over the years, really dissecting and looking at this subject. I'm hoping it can be very, very powerful for you. Let me start by saying a few years ago, in 2004, I published a really interesting book called Life is a Series of Presentations. And this book really went out to the world with really great impact, where the whole concept was this, that we're presenting all the time, that we're presenting electronically, by email, we're presenting on the phone, we're presenting sometimes in delayed presentations, such as voicemail, that we're presenting impromptu, that we're presenting all the time in our life, both personally and professionally. And I think you would agree with that as well. Well, since that time, as I've really rolled this book out, really talked a lot about it, what I've become to realize is not only is life a series of presentations, but life is a series of persuasions. And I think you would agree with me that constantly, day in and day out, we want to get people to take action on our behalf. So as a result of that, what I've done is put together this work on really thinking through how do you get people to take action with some non-traditional ideas, and hopefully you'll like them. So let's go through them. Grab your pens, grab a piece of paper, get ready to absorb. Okay, let's move into number one now. Number one is about helping other people be right. So many times when we're presenting, what we find is people are looking for ways to get people into the exact information that's going to influence them to say yes. And what I believe is we fail to step back and recognize that people are human and people are impacted by their emotions. So let's say you have a room full of people, and maybe you've got a boardroom type setting that you may be giving a presentation in. And as you're giving your presentation, you've really done your homework, you've done your preparation, and as you're going through some of your communication, you find that one of the people you're presenting to raises their hands. And you look over and that person makes a comment. And you listen to that person, it's a pretty interesting comment. Matter of fact, it's a pretty strong comment. Now we have the choice to looking at our watch and looking at our agenda and making a nice gesture and saying, okay, and moving back to our agenda, or we could actually ask that person to give us more. Using this term here as a takeaway, tell me more. So let's say the person's name's Bob, and you say, Bob, tell me more. And all of a sudden, Bob adds some more information to what he started saying, and now the rest of the room, their eyeballs are kind of turning around and looking at Bob. And then you might say something like this, if it's genuine, Bob, that's really good. Can you give me just even a bit more before we move on? And all of a sudden, internally, Bob is feeling the positiveness and really winning from being able to share that comment versus just making a comment and you move right past it. So I'm going to encourage you to think about all the different ways, if you really want to be persuasive, to really help people win. And when they're winning, there's an influence, there's a connection that really comes to your way of thinking. Okay, let's look at number two. Building a value arsenal. I really believe the reciprocal principle is such a strong component to being able to get people to take action, and yet very few people really take the time to build an arsenal of value where they can evoke the reciprocal principle. Let me talk about that for a minute. If you want to get people to take action on your behalf, oftentimes you can give them some kind of value, and in return they want to give things back to you. So what can you do? You can go out and buy a lot of things, which I do sometimes. For example, I'll oftentimes buy half a dozen books. And if I like a particular book, I'll have that book available so I can give it. Matter of fact, I just had a person in the last couple of days, and we were talking about a great book called The 5 Love Languages, which is one of my favorite books to give away to people that are getting married. And we were talking about that concept, and I ended up handing that book because I had one on hand, and I was able to give something of value because it was in part of my arsenal. I had already pre-thought about it, pre-ordered it, and had it available. One of the things that we do constantly is be looking for the very best websites out there. And what we do is we log in those websites in a little segment that we have nice and organized, and then we can serve up best websites based on subjects as a value component to our clients, to our customers, to the people around us. And that really is part of our value arsenal. As I shared many times before, and I think many of you may know as you're listening to this, is I read books. I often take and highlight and study, and I build cliff notes on those books. And I have a huge arsenal, thousands of book summaries that I've developed and acquired over the years so I can share content and I can recommend people's books. Let me encourage you to think about, are you building your value arsenal in a way that puts you in a position to be able to evoke the reciprocal principle so you can truly give value to people day in and day out where they would want to give value back to you. Some planned, some impromptu. There you have it. Item number 2. Let's talk about number 3, taking stock in who you know and who will help you. Again, I grew up with great parents. One of the things that my parents taught me was really to develop relationships, to really be able to take the time to understand and do favors for people. And if you're not doing that, let me encourage you to do that, to really think about the people you know. Today, what's really popular, of course, is LinkedIn, and let me give you some specifics of being able to utilize connections to help you be more influential and be more persuasive. If you, for example, are going to give a presentation to someone, you may go on your LinkedIn and be able to look for someone that knows someone that you're talking to. Matter of fact, I had a client that was in the moving business and they wanted to visit with someone, and I was able to go on, find in the LinkedIn a connection, be able to make a call, and be able to grab intelligence and make a connection. Think about how powerful you can be if you really take seriously your connections. And not only the connections to link the dots, but the connections for people to be able to give you intelligence, to be able to share distinctions, to be able to give you behind the scenes information so that you're stronger, you understand motivations, you understand key components to what would make their world better. Number 4, I love this one. Show people the clear picture. Let me give you a story of bringing this one to life. A few years ago, my wife and I were celebrating our 20th anniversary. We were on our way down to Mexico and we found this beautiful place called the One and Only. We were so excited about going to this place. We'd seen the videos, and maybe you've been there before, where you think about a place that you want to travel and you get excited about it. I'm sure you have. And so as we're traveling, we land and we're on our way there. We get there, we get checked into our room, and it's just the most beautiful place in the world. It's just gorgeous. And as we're laying out and kind of setting everything out of our clothes and kind of getting acclimated to the place, we notice that there's this place next door, like this room next door, that's even more spectacular than the one we have. So I'm sitting there thinking, wow, it's our 20th anniversary. That would be really good. And so I wonder if we could end up being over there. So I decided to go up to the front desk and I say, hey, it doesn't look like anybody's staying in that place next door. And I was wondering if you might consider giving us an upgrade. And what I ended up doing is I ended up thinking about, what's the clear picture? How do I really get them to do what I want? So I asked the lady at the front, I said, could you talk to the manager, and could you ask the manager to consider, since it's our 20th anniversary and since the room is not being rented, would you consider giving us an upgrade? And I walked her through every single thing so that she would not be able to say, well, no, I can't do that because I don't have the authority. What I did is bypass that, and I clearly asked her to go and ask the manager to give the reason why, and she comes back and she walks out that door and she has a thumbs up, her face is smiling, she says, he's going to do it, and they gave us the upgrade. Because I clearly gave them the picture of specifically what I wanted to have happen. So when you're persuading people, when you're wanting them to do things, whether it be your kids, whether it be someone that works for you, think about it. When you want to get someone to take action, are you truly giving them the clear picture of the steps that you want them to take? Are you walking them through every little piece so it's really easy for them to understand where you want them to go? If you're not doing that, that could be one of the big takeaways from this particular module. All right, let's look at number 5 now. And let's talk about discovering and being aware of what others really want and care about. And remember that people decide, not companies. Now here's a big mistake a lot of times we make when we're wanting to influence people. We have some type of product, some type of service, something that we're wanting to sell to someone, and oftentimes we're thinking about how that can make that particular organization better instead of thinking about how can it make the person better inside the organization. And what I would really like to encourage you to do is to think about, when you're wanting to influence someone, to think about, what do they really care about? What do they really value the most? What's going on in their mind? Are they wanting to progress up in a company? Are they wanting to expand their learning? Are they wanting to be more effective in their decision making? Are they wanting to be more impactful in the way that they do things? Sometimes taking the time to simply ask people, doing our homework or taking the time to ask someone else that knows the person or persons that we're communicating to, and being able to get that insight so that we really know what they care about and what they want, and then being able to communicate what we have to offer linked in to how it's going to help them get more of what they want. Number 6, figure out what you really want down to the smallest detail with every client or customer or even employee or subordinate or person around your life. Are you really thinking about, when you have a connection with someone, what you want to be able to get in that relationship? Are you wanting to be able to have a long-term relationship where you can nourish and mentor that person? Are you really wanting to be able to grab insight from that person where they're mentoring or sharing with you? Are you really wanting to be able to link in and brainstorm so together you can go out and create some kind of win together? Think about what are the things that you really want personally in that relationship, in that connection, to be able to drive you to be more effective in your influence. Naming people so that they want to live up to what it is that you've labeled them. Let's talk about team building for a minute. So many times we have people in our lives that we want them to be more of a team player. And if we see them doing something that really begins that process or really is sharing part of that as a team player, are we labeling them that instantly? Are we saying, hey Bob, you're really a great team player, and all of a sudden that person thinks for a minute and they're saying, wow, I'm being labeled that way. Here's one for you. Think about this, those of you that have kids. My daughter grew up and she was a cheerleader, and for years she was just always doing all kinds of championship cheer and just really smiling and being such a great person. She graduates, goes to college, and now as I correspond with her, constantly I'm texting her and I'm calling her a cheerleader, so that she can go out and encourage those around her, so she can go out and bring that big smile that she has as a cheerleader to the world, in her sorority, in her dormitory, in all the places she's at. So I'm asking you to think about that. Are you thinking about a person that's really very customer service oriented, and you say to that person, maybe you're doing business with them and you want them to be able to connect with you? Are you saying, hey, you know, one of the things about you and what we're finding about your organization is you guys are very customer friendly? And all of a sudden they perk up and they go, yeah, and they're really wanting to do more for you as a customer because you've labeled them that and they want to live up to that. Social proof, testimonials. You know, time to time, people come into our organization, they come into our studio here, and we sit down and we talk about where they're going, and we talk about their branding, we talk about their marketing, we talk about their sales, we talk about how they persuade people to do business with them. And a big piece to that puzzle is really being able to build a great arsenal of testimonials. You see, people are what? People really want safety. They really want validation. And in order to be able to do that, what do we need to do? We need to be able to constantly be asking ourselves, how's our arsenal of validation? How's our social proof? Do we have great videos? Do we have great one-liners? Sometimes people will send information back in an email. I'm sure you get that from time to time. And are you capturing that and putting that into a testimonial segment in your phone? So in the future, you've got a whole area where you've got one-liners and things that people have said about your company or about your service or your offering, and that you can leverage and reuse to be able to be more influential. Are you constantly asking people to refer, to give you reference letters? If you go look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I've got tons and tons and tons of references and referrals, because I'm constantly asking people to give me referrals, to give me distinctions, to give me testimonials. Are you doing the same? Should you be? Think about your own situation. Are you looking for ways to be able to take that validation, sort it and organize it so you can be more influential in the future? Alrighty, let's talk about testimonials now. Item number 8, and social proof. People really want validation, and what I found is a lot of times people have failed to take the time to really build their testimonial or their reference arsenal. And I'm going to ask you to think about yourself personally and or the organization that you may be part of. How well have you really built the references? How well have you really built your testimonials? From time to time, what I find is people will get a nice note from a customer and they get it in some kind of email format, and they fail to take the time to organize that and actually keep it somewhere on their phone so they can reuse it in the future. Maybe they use it for a speech or a sales presentation, or they use it in some type of e-communication in the future. Let me encourage you, if you're not doing that, to constantly be keeping up in your phone testimonials. Let me encourage you to also be asking for references. You know, one of the things we have on my personal LinkedIn is we're constantly asking people for references and referrals, and you can see that we have a giant list if you go to my personal LinkedIn. How about you? Are you asking for referrals enough? Are you asking people to write a letter? Are you, even when someone says something important, are you saying, hey, can I quote you on that? And literally typing it up and organizing it right there so that you really do have a great testimonial arsenal. You know, people come into the studio all the time and they're asking me to help them drive more business, to be able to shape their brands, to be more effective in their marketing efforts, and of course being able to sell more effectively. And I think alignment between all three of those are extremely valuable, extremely important, and I think a big piece to the puzzle is how well do you build your arsenal? Building that testimonial arsenal, being able to even go through and look at what people are saying so that as you're developing your marketing, as you're developing your communication, you can see what your customers are really liking. So there you have it, number 8. Let's look at number 9, being flexible and communicating the style the recipient wants to receive your message in, managing your pace. I think a lot of people get into the mode of what's natural for them. For me, again, I'm a pretty quick person. I like to speak fast. I like to talk fast. And not all the times is that the best in terms of being able to influence someone when I'm talking fast if someone that I'm talking to prefers to be at a little slower pace. So I need to make adjustments, and I'm guessing maybe you do as well. If that's something that you're not doing, if you're not stepping back and saying, you know, as I talk to my boss, superior, the CEO, whoever I may be talking to, is that person more fast-paced? And if I'm talking a little slower, maybe I'm not being as influential in my ideas that I could be because I'm not adjusting my pace to that person's pace, to that person's style. So let me encourage you to do the same thing. And it doesn't just stop with pace. It really goes on beyond that to the style in terms of, do they prefer to have email? Do they prefer to have text? Do they prefer to have one-on-one in person? Think about the style. Think about the way you're delivering, and deliver in a way that that person wants to receive it. Number 10, telling stories. Connecting the dots can really engage and persuade people. I think the whole case study piece and being able to share examples is huge. Let me give you one for example. Sam's was introducing a concept called the Line Buster. And it was an actual device built by a company called Symbol, which is another one of our clients, where when someone was in line at a Sam's Club, it still happens today, when someone's in line and you're like 2 and 3 back from the cashier, someone can come by with one of these devices, can actually scan your merchandise in your cart or in your basket, and when you move to the front of the line, it's already in the computer and you're ready to sign, and it saves you several minutes. A very, very great concept. Everybody wants to save minutes. If you think about it, when you go get in line, what are you doing? You're pushing your cart up there and you're looking around for the fastest line. Everybody wants to save minutes. Well, what I shared with Tom at the time is I said, Tom, why don't you get up and in your speech do something a little different, and why don't you kind of act this out into like a little skit on the stage and really be able to show that. So we brought a basket up on stage at one of the Walmart shareholders meetings, like 18,000 people, and he actually acted that out, shared it in a way that was really phenomenal and was really a fantastic speech, very, very influential. And I ask you to think about this. He actually told the story in a skit format and became very impactful. And then I just shared with you this story as an example of what I did for him, which becomes more impactful. So I ask you, are you really looking for stories? Are you really becoming a really great storyteller? Are you even looking for other stories that people use and you say, you know what, I could use that story? And you could say, hey, a friend of mine shared this story with me, and that could be a story that you use to be more influential in sharing with what you need to do. Maybe you need to work with a different department. Maybe you need to expand a relationship. Maybe you need to build a partnership. Maybe you need to sell your products or services, and being able to share case studies or stories can be very impactful, constantly building your mental arsenal of stories. Number 11, exceed expectations, and people will want to help you over and over again. How's your personal brand? Do you have a brand of a person that's constantly exceeding expectations? You know, I believe most people do not take a strategic approach to their brand. They don't step back and say, who do I really want to become? Because I believe a person's reputation or brand has a huge impact if someone's going to follow what you ask them to do or not. And I believe taking a strategic approach to that can be extremely valuable. And I believe this. I believe if you really are a person that's giving and sharing and exceeding expectations day in and day out, you draw people to you. You build a brand or a reputation of someone that's really giving great value, and people want to follow. People want to reciprocate. People want to do what you ask. So think about your own personal brand. Is that something you need to work on? Let's go to number 12. Number 12 is preempting objections. Preparing responses and making it easy for people to say yes. Taking the time to step back and think about if you're wanting to influence someone to do something, and again, it could be a partnership, it could be able to sell someone a contract, it could be able to get someone to buy whatever you have to offer. Are you taking the time to say, hey, what's on this person's mind? What might be some of the objections that they have to deal with? And then how do I, and or if there's a combination of people in your team, best fitted, best suited to be able to answer that objection if that objection comes up? And or can you even preempt the objection by being transparent? Matter of fact, I was on the phone with Stephen M.R. Covey yesterday, a good friend of mine who just wrote a fantastic book about smart trust. And one of the things we were talking about in that conversation was being transparent. And sometimes being transparent with your objections, saying something like this: hey, Mr. Customer, maybe what's on your mind is da-da-da-da, this. And that customer's going, wow, that is on my mind. And you're actually laying out that objection right there on the table, being transparent, and then being able to communicate your situation and how you can overcome that. Being real today is very, very impactful. Let me encourage you to think about transparency. Let me encourage you to think about taking the time to really understand objections, laying that out, communicating in a way that can be extremely valuable for you. So there you have 12 great ideas on how to be more influential. Obviously, they're not all the ideas, but they're 12 good ideas. And what I'd like to do now is ask you to pause for a minute, and I'd like you to think through the things that you might could do something with. What are the things you really need to take action on of those 12? So I'm going to ask, go ahead and put the list up now on the screen. If you take a look at those, go ahead and take a pause right now, if you would. Look at those 12 and put yourself, if you would, some notes in your, go ahead and do it in your phone if you've got it there. Put down influence, and in your influence section of your area in your phone, go ahead and write down or type in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things that you want to do more effectively so you can be more influential. Go ahead and pause now. Okay, so hopefully you've picked a few items that you want to take some action on. So in summary, let me just encourage you to constantly be improving this skill set. Matter of fact, it's really more than a skill set, it's an entire ability. Being able to influence and persuade people is extremely valuable. Let me offer up one more thing. Part of this module, as an inclusion, what we're going to do is actually give you a PDF of a little book I wrote called Tony Jeary on Influence. And this covers many of the things that we just talked about, plus more. So let me encourage you to study that and continue to really be your very best.